Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tearing down the anatomy of an absolute juggernaut. We're going to completely deconstruct the four pillars of SpaceX. How did a tiny 2002 startup take on actual global superpowers and win? Well, if you've ever wanted to look under the hood of the modern space race, you are definitely in the right place. $100 million. Back in 2002, an eccentric internet entrepreneur walks away from selling PayPal, takes $100 million of his own cash, and bets the whole thing on this empty warehouse down in Southern California. I mean, just think about the sheer audacity of that for a second. Literally everyone in aerospace, veteran engineers, seasoned financial analysts, they all predicted he was going to burn through every single dollar. And honestly, as we'll see, they were very, very nearly right. To really grasp this, we got to talk about old space. You know, space used to be this ultra-exclusive VIP club just for superpowers. For decades, getting a single satellite into orbit required massive national treasuries, the existential urgency of the Cold War, and armies of government scientists. So the whole premise of New Space, the idea of a lone entrepreneur starting a rocket company from scratch in a warehouse, it didn't just sound crazy, it seemed physically and financially impossible. Because here is the crucial reality check. Starting a space company is absolutely nothing like building a software app. You cannot fix a hardware failure midair with a quick over-the-air update. Space is just visceral. It is entirely unforgiving. You're wrestling with insane fluid dynamics, extreme thermodynamics where temperatures literally melt steel, and structural pressures that would crush titanium like a tin can. You can't just hack your way to orbit. Section 1, the core, the four non-negotiable pillars. So, if you're going to build a modern space enterprise and actually survive, there are four non-negotiable pillars: vertical integration, rapid iteration, regulatory navigation, and psychological endurance. Let's break these down. Take a look at the scale of in-house production here. This is our first pillar, radical vertical integration. Traditional defense contractors relied on thousands of specialized subcontractors, right? But every single one of those layers adds profit margins and endless bureaucratic delays. To slash the cost of reaching orbit by a staggering 90%, SpaceX realized they had to manufacture over 85% of their rockets entirely in-house. We're talking about building the whole shebang. Massive rocket engines, turbopumps, down to the flight computers and valves, all under one roof. Pillar 2 is their relentless engineering culture. Old space companies, they'd spend 10 years analyzing designs on paper, completely terrified of making a single mistake. But a modern space company does the exact opposite. They rapid prototype, they push it to the physical limit, and they literally let things explode on the test stand. Then they grab the telemetry data from that massive fireball, figure out what went wrong, and rebuild the hardware in just weeks. It's totally wild. Then there's the third pillar, navigating a massive labyrinth of regulations. It's actually pretty easy to forget, but rockets are essentially controlled ballistic missiles. So operating one means you aren't just doing math and physics. You're clearing incredibly strict international arms trade regulations, complex aviation safety approvals from the FAA, not to mention massive environmental clearances. It is an absolute legal gauntlet. Which brings us to the fourth pillar, absolute psychological endurance. Musk's first 3 Falcon 1 launches, they all ended in fiery explosions over the Pacific Ocean. I mean, just imagine watching your entire fortune literally burn up in the sky 3 times in a row. The company was literally days away from total bankruptcy. It took absolute, raw psychological endurance to push through to that 4th attempt in late 2008, which finally achieved orbit and saved the entire company. Okay, so now that we've covered the engineering side of things, we really have to ask the multi-billion-dollar question. How do you actually turn the cold, empty void of space into a profitable business? Because let's face it, engineering success doesn't just automatically equal financial survival. Well, it starts with a terrifying barrier to entry. If you want to start a rocket company today, just getting to orbit requires at least $500 million to $2 billion. And keep in mind, that's just to create a reliable, functional prototype. If you want to scale up operations, like, say, landing boosters back on Earth or deploying massive satellite networks, that capital requirement quickly rockets past $10 to $20 billion. So where does all that cash come from? Well, rocket launches are basically the entry ticket. A space company can charge commercial satellite operators or government agencies anywhere from $60 to $100 million per launch. That gives you a nice, solid financial baseline. But if you rely only on that, you hit wall fast. Launch capacity has natural physical limits. You can only launch so many rockets in a single year. So the real financial engine actually lies much higher up the value chain. By launching a constellation of low Earth orbit satellites, what we know as Starlink, SpaceX transformed itself from a simple transportation company into a massive global telecommunications utility. They are delivering high-speed satellite internet to millions of subscribers across oceans, remote regions, maritime fleets, you name it. That generates high-margin, recurring subscription revenue. And on top of that, profits are flowing in from high-value defense contracts, space station resupply missions, and long-term lunar infrastructure. Section 2. Weighing the void. The dramatic advantages versus the brutal risks. Okay, so the advantages here are incredible. Succeeding in space creates an almost insurmountable competitive moat. The technical complexity is so immense that once you master reusable rocketry, virtually no traditional company can touch you on cost. You're looking at a rapidly expanding trillion-dollar market, and you naturally attract the absolute sharpest engineering talent in the world. But the risks are equally massive. The capital burn rate is terrifying. You're incinerating millions every single day for years before ever seeing a profit. Plus, you are deeply, deeply exposed to geopolitical shifts, defense budgets, and regulatory policies that can freeze your operations overnight. But honestly, the biggest risk is the absolute zero margin for error. Think about it. If an app crashes, you just reboot your phone. In this industry, a single microscopic flaw in a rocket engine valve results in a multi-$100 million fireball broadcast live across the entire globe. The stakes are just unimaginably high. Section 3. Accessing the space economy. Now, for everyday individuals, there are really 4 main avenues to get in on the space economy today. First, you've got direct public equity offerings when space companies list on major stock exchanges. Second, you can buy shares in publicly traded aerospace suppliers. These are the folks making the specialized raw materials or microchips. Third, there are broad market aerospace and defense ETFs, which basically bundle satellite operators and rocket builders into a single diversified asset. And fourth, accredited retail platforms are now periodically offering access to pre-IPO private secondary shares. But all of this brings us to the ultimate moral question, doesn't it? Is this all just an expensive playground for billionaires? I mean, critics frequently ask why we are spending billions of dollars launching metal into orbit when Earth faces urgent problems like poverty, climate change, and economic inequality. And you know what? It is a very understandable concern. But here's the thing. Space exploration is not about escaping Earth. It's actually about empowering it. The intense challenge of surviving in space forces engineers to invent technologies that you and I probably use every single day. Solar panels, the GPS on your phone, satellite weather prediction, advanced water purification systems, emergency disaster connectivity. All of these exist precisely because engineers were forced to solve the insanely difficult problems of space. When we follow or support these ambitious companies, we are participating in humanity's deep-seated drive to expand its boundaries. They prove that when human ingenuity, private capital, and long-term ambition align, problems that seemed completely impossible can actually be solved. As the saying goes, a civilization that stops reaching outward is a civilization that has settled for standing still. So if a tiny startup in an empty warehouse can eventually touch the stars, what seemingly impossible problem out there is waiting for you to solve? Keep learning, keep looking up, and we'll see you in the next explainer.